Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Bottom Rung by me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Blame all the mistakes on me and all the quality on him. Tibs squinted. He'd gone from light of lantern into daytime. He located the sun through the gray crowd, mid-morning. Bracelet, a woman said before he could run off. He raised his arm and pulled the sleeve down to show it. Name? She wore the green and black of the new guards, but her eyes were the gray of metal essence wielder. He tried to determine what her class was, but she had no armor on, no sword at her belt, no bow, and he didn't think she was a sorceress. Tibs. She took a book out of a pocket and flipped through it. It was smaller than her palm. The cover was black leather. She smiled. Ah, Mr. Lightfingers. I haven't stolen anything here, he said. The slight whine in his voice was because he was tired, he told himself. If the new guards knew the name Bardic had given him, he'd never escape it. She raised an eyebrow. Meaning you stole elsewhere, she made a note in the book. Before here, you read to say. I've been good. You're a thief, she said casually, putting the book away. You aren't kept around to be good. She cupped the bracelet in both hands and her eyes became unfocused. I'm a rogue, Tibbs mentally corrected her as he paid attention to what she did. He felt essence move, not his, and other than knowing gray eyes meant metal, he couldn't tell the kind of essence she was manipulating or how she manipulated it. When he'd felt Walter manipulate water, here he couldn't sense any of the details of what she did. The bracelet loosened, opened, and then she moved her hand away. And when she moved her hand away, she kept it. Tibbs purposely didn't rub his wrist. Alistair gained a reflex from when he broke the rules and was branded. Alistair said the brand he wore it itched. Tibbs wouldn't give in to the discomfort he felt now. He wouldn't act as if he'd been marked. She placed the bracelet in a crate and seemed surprised to see him there. You can go, she said, making a shooing motion. Tibbs ran past those for their turn on the platform and wondered how they'd known not to have someone there when he arrived, or what would happen if there had been someone there. He could ask Alistair later. Right now, he needed to make it to his room. He skidded to a stop. Did they have one? Where, where would they go if they didn't? Someone bumped into him and Tibbs reflexively checked he still had his pouch, then realized the crowd wasn't only larger than he expected, but the quality of the clothing much higher. Right, they'd been called back because the dungeon was reopening and others could now run it too. He looked at the people. People with quains. Tibbs headed for the inn. He decided that even if they had a room, that was the more reliable place to find his team. He had to push through people, which elicited curses, and having to use his hand to make space before him made resisting the urge to dip his finger into those full pockets difficult to resist. Woof! Uh, having to use his hand to make space before him made the urge to dip his fingers into those full pockets difficult to resist. He needed to ask Alistair what the punishment for picking pocket was in the town. It couldn't be the loss of a hand, not if they wanted him to be an efficient rogue. The inn was busy, but not full. A harried Krosef noticed him and motioned to a corner. Every table was occupied, but most had free seats. He recognized runners, but there were a lot of strangers too. Looking, there were a lot of strangers too, looking around with a mix of nervousness and eagerness. The fighter stood before Tibbs reached them. There you are, Tibbs. Jekyll greeted him. How was the sea? It was nice, he replied. Just nice? You seemed so excited to run to see it, and it was just nice? Let him be, Jekyll, Kieran admonished. We were worried, Tibbs. I wanted to make sure I got to see the sea, he replied. With the gem turning red, I had to hurry. She looked at him. Tibbs, you had 2 days. That's what Harry said. Once it turns red, we have 2 days to come back. I yelled it, but you just kept running. Oh, hey, you came back, the archer said, placing four tankards on the table. The server gave me four. He explained at Kirino's raised eyebrow. Considering how he was fawning over Jackal earlier, I figured it was the extra one was for him. You're still here? Tibbs asked, unable to mask his surprise. Considering how the archer had reacted to the way Jackal had taken down the man trying to strangle him, Tibbs had expected him to want nothing to do with them. I'm still making up my mind, looked at Jekyll. When you sent me to pick this up, were you expecting me to pay? The server didn't ask for anything, but I want to know if I should expect to be stopped when we leave. Still have enough left with him to cover these, Jekyll replied and smiled. Next round's on you. What did you think of the sea? Wasn't it amazing? Tibbs thought it was okay, Jekyll said. You saw the sea? That's what I wanted to do before coming back here, Mez said. I told you that. We all went down to the sea, Karina said. We would have gone with you if you hadn't run off. Isn't it funny how we didn't see you there? Jekyll asked. The pier's big, Karina said, glaring at the fighter, and there's more than one, so Tibbs was on another one. Right? Yeah, Tibbs said, then glared at the fighter when he looked like he was about to press. He'd respect his secret. Jekyll could swallow his curiosity and indignation. He placed a sea drop on the table. I did find a candy. It's supposed to be very good, and hopefully it could be broken and shared. Miles looked at it, then leaned back in his seat. You know, those three aren't going to be happy when they return. You beat them pretty bad. If they come back, Jekyll said, taking a longest swallow of his tankard, eyeing the candy suspiciously. Like you said, we beat them pretty bad. We beat them bad. Doesn't it doesn't trouble you that they might be sentenced to death because what you did to them? If you're that callous about someone dying, I don't think we're going to be able to work together. They were going to kill you, Karina said. It was 3 against 1. I know you felt confident, but that rock thog had you by the throat by the time Jackal got him off you. I don't want them to die, but what do you think would happen to them if they hadn't gone? I don't want them to die, but what do you think would happen to them if they'd done that here? The guild isn't nice to those who break the rules. We aren't supposed to try and kill one another. Unless we're in the dungeon, Jekyll added. And you feel that makes it okay? As demanded. He stopped, rubbed his face, then sipped his ale, all the while glaring at Jackal, who seemed happy to ignore it. Look, if you're no better than them, why should I join this team? Tell me you're some purity user under that fire, Jekyll said, annoyed. You didn't get here by paying for it like these new people did. You were in a cell like we were. Mez stifled a scream. Yes, I broke laws. I don't claim to be pure, but we have a chance to be better now. Why is it everyone here seems to see this as a chance to be Why is it everyone here seems to see this chance as nothing more than an opportunity to do more of what they used to? Because that's what the guild wants, Tibs said, which had the archer glaring at him. I think he's right, Jekyll said, sounding pensive, and Karina looked at him suspiciously. What? The guild took people from prison, not noble sons and daughters, us, criminals. Alistair says it's because having to live hard forces us to find out what we are, Tib said, and Jekyll nodded. You're also assuming that what you saw us do isn't us being better, Kirina told Mez. Tibbs and Jekyll's a street. Do you know what that means? Mez nodded and pointing to Jekyll. Him, I'd figured of that. Tibbs, I just heard he was a good rogue. Jekyll hasn't hurt anyone here. Tibbs hasn't stolen anything. It was hard, Tibbs grumbled before taking a drink. Here, Mez said, staring at her. She sighed. The rules only apply here, Maz, under the guild. She raised a hand before he protested, but once we left, we visited Crozef's family, we climbed a mountain as a team, we looked at the sky, at the city, and we didn't start committing crimes. Mez didn't look convinced, so Tibbs added, I fell off the side of a mountain. I got hurt bad, and Jekyll rescued me. They carried me all the way down to the city, and they found someone to heal me. When we saw another runner in trouble, we went to help you. Tips paused long enough for another swallow. I don't think we're good. We have a past, and that affects who we are. But I think I'm better than teammates who are willing to kill one of theirs. We did what we did to help you, not hurt them. Mess sighed. I am grateful you did save my life, but Don did something like that. Jekyll said, just as Tip grumbled, is an ass. Mess snorted and stared at him. I've been on his team, Tibbs said twice, back when they picked random runners to fill a position. Look, Jekyll said, let's put aside if you're going to be on the team as one of us. What I need to know right now is if you are willing to be on the team for the next run, because I need to work out if I'm looking for one or two people to round us up. I'll do that, as answered. I owe you that at least. Any thought on who will be the fifth? Karina asked. Are we looking at one of the new arrivals? I'd rather one of us. Jekyll replied. I don't trust these nobles to have our best interest at heart. And I don't see them wanting to join us, Mez said. Not when Not when they can have their guards with them. He straightened as Kirina opened her mouth. It's a good thing the dungeon resets after each run. Can you imagine having to survive off those people's leftovers? They'd probably let the guards do all the work and collect the rewards for themselves. They can't bring in guards, Kirina said. You saw the argument that woman had when she arrived, yeah, right? Saw, sure. Understood, not a thing. You didn't? Kirina trailed off. I thought the platform would make it so we'd understand them too. I mean, she spoke my language. Miss chuckled. How much are you willing to bet the guild has someone who can do that? Can do who can do to them what the platform did to us for the right fee? Jekyll raised the tankard to the archer. At least you understand how the guild thinks. They needed us to be able to communicate. The guild doesn't have to care how much trouble the nobles get into because they can't speak the language. And if the nobles want to get better, Tibs said darkly, they have to fight the dungeon themselves. Nobles don't need the loot, they're nobles. Not all nobles are wealthy, Karina said, glancing at Jekyll, who raised an eyebrow in return. And even those who are can always want more. So we don't have to worry about the nobles taking all our loot? Jekyll said, smiling. I'm going to say hi to Crow. Then how about we go see our room? He didn't wait for a reply. Did he and Khrushchev spend time together already? You said he fawned over Jekyll. And that's all Khrushchev had the time to do, Karina said. If we didn't have priority as runners, I don't think we'd be able to get a room anywhere in town. Jekyll returned with a perplexed expression. You won't believe what I just find out. The town has been named, he grinned. Some noble went and registered the name as Craggle Rock. They can do that? Tibbs asked. Could we have named it? Can we change it? Nobles can do anything they want, Mez said. Ah. 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 Okay. You know what? I've got to change it. As much as I would like to keep Mez active in the conversation, that is not something he would say. And that's a line anyone can say. Nobles can do anything they want, Jekyll said. We could have we couldn't leave. Kirina said, so I doubt we would have been able to make it to whatever this kingdom's registry, wherever, been able to make it to wherever this kingdom's registry hall is, and we would need a lot of coins. What does Craggle even mean? Jekyll asked, chuckling. A noble did it, Tib said, so it can't mean anything good for us. Getting a room was simple. They showed up at the rooming house. The woman behind the counter recognized them, took them to the storage room holding their chests, and they and they and and they took that to the room she'd given them. They were on the 5th floor this time. Tibbs took to Tibbs took the left corner bed again, with Carrie the one next to his and Jackal the one on the other side of the room. They decided to let Mez stay until they resolved if he would stay on their team. Once they were settled in, Tibs was back in his armor. He pulled Jackal outside and handed him the coin he'd taken in Mountain Sea. Tiz, those are your cut from the runs. They aren't, he wiggled his fingers. How long have you been doing it? Jekyll asked, looking around, then counted the copper coins. Says the arena. I try not to do it there, but because it's Jekyll's home. But like Karina said, the rules are for here. She said that's once we were back. That's 18. Do you want silver for 15? I'm a rogue. There's only so many pockets I can resist. I don't want them in case the guards decide to search me and put me in a cell. He rubbed his left wrist. You're the one with the pouch no one can see, Jekyll said, and the guards aren't going to care about what you did outside of Craggle Rock. Jekyll snickered as he said the name. It just sounds funny. Tibbs shrugged. It was his town. It was his town's name now. He wouldn't make fun of it. Are you sure? We beat up 3 runners. If there's one thing we need to worry about having hard knuckles come down on us for, it's that. He handed him a silver and 3 coppers. You keep them. You earned them. I stole them, Tibbs whispered. Jekyll patted Tibbs on the shoulder and whispered back, You're a rogue. Up for some training? Bardic asked, suddenly next to Tibbs. Tibbs didn't startle, but only because he'd been readying for the other rogues to do something like that, and because he'd decided he wasn't giving him the satisfaction anymore, even if that took all his will, even if that took all the willpower he had. There had to be a way he could sense essence to tell where the rogue. There had to be a way he could sense other how. No, I could sense the essence when the rogue hid. Tibbs nodded and followed Bardic to their usual spot, and instead of the stack of lumbers, worker were putting up a building. I guess we don't have this spot anymore, Bardic mused. Come on, I know another place we can train. They walked through alleys Tibbs didn't know, and he realized construction hadn't stopped while he'd been away. He'd have to refamiliarize himself with the layout of his town. Would there come a day Craggle Rock would be too large for him to know properly? Would he have to go back to knowing only a few streets then? Would he be relegated to that instead of having a town? A hand forced Tibbs to stop moving, and Bardic looked at him quizzically, his hand on his chest. A guard in green and black walking where Tibbs would have stepped. Is there something you want to tell me before you start a fight with one of these new fancy guards? The rogue asked. Tibbs bit his lower lips. I'm afraid the town will get too big for me to know, he admitted. I don't want to just have a few streets anymore. Bardic looked around. It's going to happen, Tibbs. Even the people who plan how this city grows are going to lose track of it eventually. That's how they end up with places like the street you grew up on. He chuckled at Tibbs' stunned look. Did you think they planned for places where street folks would go? So I'll be street again. You'll always be street, Tibbs. It's in you, just like your essence is. But you won't be locked in. Sooner than you think, you'll be able to leave this place, see other cities. I'll show them to you if you want. Tibbs narrowed his eyes at the man. That's sounding a lot like you want me to be your special guy. Bardic laughed. No, I just think you'd enjoy seeing more than this town. Did you like Mountain Sea? He began walking again. It's big and bright. Yeah, and the sea. I remember gazing at it, trying to see where it ended, imagining traveling there to discover things no one had seen before. Did you do it? Bardic shook his head, absently rubbing his left wrist. I had to grow up. Then the guild happened. He moved his hand away. But I will, one day, when I'm free of all this. He reached another construction site, this one at the edge of the town. Spikes marked a perimeter even closer to the lake than before. I thought you might like seeing how close we're getting, Bardic said. It looks so small compared to the sea. Even at a distance, it was larger than the lake, but he hadn't gotten to touch the sea. Eventually, he'd get to touch the lake. Guards walked along the spikes and looked at them as they passed. Do you know them? Tibbs asked, taking his knife out. No, Harry Hardknuckles brought them in. I'm just happy I no longer have to keep you miscreants in line. He faced Tibbs and had a knife in his hand like every other time. Had a knife in his hand. Like every other time, Tibbs didn't know where it had been hidden. You got me to commit any crimes I did here, Tibbs said, darting toward the rogue. Bardic stepped aside lazily and swiped at Tibbs. I didn't have you steal one thing, Tibbs. Tibbs ducked under the swing and studied the ground. Too uneven for him to coat it with water, and he couldn't use his other essences. If it wasn't a crime, you'd have done it yourself. He reminded himself this wasn't about beating Bardic, but learning from him. Beating him would just be nice. He dodged the next two swings and parried one. Is it gone? Tibbs asked, nodding to his wrist. I haven't finished paying for my crime yet. Tibbs cursed as the tip of Bardic's blade nicked his armor. The rogue wasn't fighting as hard as he could. Tibbs wouldn't last one blow. All Bardic had to do was vanish, and next thing Tibbs would know, his knife would be impaled in his heart. This was how Bardic taught him to be nimble on his feet, swift in avoiding being hit. How was the candy? I haven't eaten it yet. I'm going to share it with my team. The rogue chuckled. Ah, to have the days when my team meant something again. Hang on to them, Tibbs. Soon enough, they're going to be gone. What? Before he could get over the surprise, Bardic had his knife under Tibbs' throat. Don't let... Was that a trick? Bardic demanded. What do you mean they'll be gone? Don't worry about it. Bardic turned away. No, you don't tell me that and walk away. I lost too many people. Will something happen to them? Do you know something I have to know to keep them safe? Bardic faced him, hands now empty. Something always happens, Tibbs. The dungeon should have taught you that by now. But I don't mean they'll die. That isn't something I can know, Tibbs. But you're all runners. You know what that means. It just means that as you go up in ranks, the guild will make demands on all of you who survive. You will have different duties. You will grow apart, become stranger to one another. No, Tibbs the guild, we're going to stay friends, even if we have to go our separate ways. We are going to stay friends. Tibbs glared at the man, dared him to contradict him. He wouldn't let distance change how he felt about his friends. That he might one day meet them again and not know who they were scared him almost as much as the thought of one of them dying. I hope you do, Bardic. I hope you do, Tibbs, Bardic sighed, and for a fleeting moment he seemed old and reminded him of something he couldn't place. Then the rogue grinned. What did you think of Charles? It took a few seconds for Tibbs to catch the new conversation thread. He goes by Cliff now. Really now? Okay, but now it's gonna... Really? Bardic chuckled. He never did like the name. It's been too long since I've seen little Charles. Once I'm done here, I need to see about going to Mountain Sea again. Find out what he's up to these days. Next time you stop by Old Walrus Tavern, bring it with you. I can't put it in his pocket. Bardic laughed. Just go there and enjoy a tankard of ale. Bardic flicked a copper coin at Tibbs. He caught it, and when he looked up, Bardic was gone. And this concludes chapter 34 of Bottom Rung. If you are enjoying this, subscribe and hit the bell. If you share with your friends. If you want to read this, it's on Royal Road. The link is in the notes, as is the link to my Patreon, should you want to support me. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.